All right, class, let me see what's going on with my webcam. How are you guys doing today? Just 1 second. Let me get... What's up, Keith? How you doing? I think it should work now. All right, there we go. Can you guys see me? What's up, Lena? Hey, Nakara. What's going on, guys? Oh, today I'm exhausted. I don't know about you guys. It's been a long day. Tired, but okay. Yeah, I think we're all in the same boat. Yep. Yeah. Lena says the same. All right, so we're gonna just kind of continue where we left off last Tuesday. I'm gonna show you how to recolor that ball that we worked with inside of After Effects, and also then we're gonna talk about we're gonna create a bouncing ball inside of Cinema 4D, and then we're also gonna create a bouncing ball inside of Adobe Animate. I'm sorry, I'm just getting to my appropriate notes. 1 second. All right, there we go. No. So Keith asked if it's going to be the bold 4 bounces in, let me see. So it doesn't mean 4 balls. You're going to have 3 balls set up like this, but I just want them to bounce each 4 times. Does that make sense? So like 4 total bounces. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. So essentially, I'll show you kind of what you'll have to do setting up inside of After Effects. Like right now while we're working, I'll kind of show you how to duplicate the bounce 4 times. And but it will just be 3 balls, so I apologize if that's a bit confusing there. Let me open up our project. Nice and easy, just going back to it like this. Do you guys have any plans for this holiday weekend, Labor Day weekend? If the video is looping, how do we know if it's 4 times? Because you're not going to create like an infinite looping GIF. It's going to be just a single MP4 with 4 total bounces. And so you're going to submit the MP4. It'll have a title on it. It's going to have, it will look actually like, yeah, actually, that's what we're gonna do. And it's not lazy. That's actually smart animating because we want it to just loop 4 times. That's what I'm gonna show you how to do. And it's not gonna be like, so Lena, what you saw there was the GIF, but we're not exporting it as a GIF, we're exporting it as an MP4. So, like I said, it'll have a title introducing the balls, and then those balls will, 1 second. Let me just kind of turn that down a bit. Those balls will fade on screen. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Just 1 second here. Okay, I apologize about that, guys. That was my mom calling me like 6 times in a row, just making sure it wasn't an emergency. um, Let me see. Okay, I don't want to look like I was cheating. No, definitely not cheating. Hey Audrey, what's up? Just joined in the chat. No, that's smart working. We're gonna just loop it, but you want to make sure. The thing is, what we're doing is making sure that first bounce looks really good before we duplicate that bounce, so that there's not a bunch of issues in it. So let me get back into After Effects here and just kind of show you guys how to do that. And so I have After Effects pulled up. We have the ball here. We have it bouncing with some squash and stretch. Now this ball looks great, right? Like it really does look cool. Let me take the alpha channel away here so you can kind of just focus on the ball. The ball looks really cool, but it kind of is missing something that it's missing like motion blur. So what motion blur is it's when you see something moving really fast, like on screen, right? Like if I start moving my hands like this, you can't see everything very sharply. You can't see all my fingers. It's what those animated smears replicate, right? Is like moving fast. Fast motion equals blurry motion inside of animation. That's just what you should know. And so when things move, they should have motion blur applied. And so we usually don't do this until later on in the semester, but this ball, it looks pretty good here, and I want to just kind of make it a little bit better looking, and so I am going to add that motion blur on. Now there's a couple different ways that you can do this, which we'll learn later in the semester, but there is a really quick way to add motion blur, and that's by over here in the very like kind of the bottom left area of your timeline. You notice this little ball. It looks like it's replicated like 3 times, and that's motion blur, and you're going to click that to toggle that on. Remember, blue means on. And then whenever you turn something on here, it just turns it on in the timeline, but in order for it to be applied, you have to turn it on to whatever layers you want it applied to. And so I want to apply to this ball layer here. And so what I'm going to do is, let me just zoom in real quick. I'm going to open this. Zoom it. Okay. You want to... we want to toggle this little box on right here. And so you're just going to click in this little box, and that little box is going to show up with a little motion blur symbol. And now as I scrub through, you can see it starts to get blurry, showing that it's moving fast, right? So if I turn that off, like right here, you can see it's blurry. If I shut that off, you're going to see it goes more to crisp again. So let's add that motion blur in just to sell the speed, right? It sells it that it's moving a lot faster. And then we've got this really cool looking ball with some squash and stretch here. I do want to ease some of these keyframes for the squashing and stretching. Now I'm not going to ease these ones on the end because these ones should be happening quickly, or do I want to ease these ones and not these ones? Let me think about it for a second. So sometimes this is what you're going to end up doing, is just thinking about how the motion should be looking. And like, it's okay to walk yourself through it, right? So the ball's falling to the ground. Gravity is pulling the ball, and it's being affected by acceleration, and that gravity and that velocity is starting to stretch that ball out. So I feel like it would actually start off slow and then move into quickly. So I'm going to, I think I'm going to ease the end keyframes here of the squashing and stretching. So I'm going to select both of those. The first the first scale keyframe, right? And the last scale for keyframe. And I'm going to go into my graph, and I am just going to hit easy ease on that. And then I'm just going to kind of drag. I'm going to go, oh, didn't want to do that. Let's click back on that. If that ever happens, and you guys, it like kind of makes the thing go away, the graph go away, just click on whatever property that you're working with, and you can see the lines again. So I'm going to select those. I'm going to drag those kind of in like this, holding down Shift. And do the same here. Drag these in, holding down Shift. And then I'm going to play this. Yeah, that looks really neat. You could also... So right here, it's starting to squash down to the furthest squash, where we'll turn off the motion blur real quick so we can just kind of see what's happening. I'm going to select these two, and I am going to ease the two middle ones. And I'm going to just kind of drag, holding down Shift, dragging these layers out a little bit. So they're just slightly more exaggerated. These curves, right? Which means it's going to quickly go into that flattened look. It's going to quickly move into it rather than slowly, right? Because the graph, the view of the graph is opposite. I actually don't like that. So when, let me go back to, I am going to spread out my keyframes. I'm going to drag this one here and this one here, and then just kind of see if I like the way that looks. Oh, yeah, I don't mind that because it hits and it starts to... I don't want that, actually, because I don't want it to squash before it hits the ground. So I'm just going to put those back. I'm going to play this. It's not bad. I'm going to go ahead and add that motion blur back in. So I'm going to turn that back on. Questions? My graph looks a lot different than yours, but the animation looks good. You also could be looking at your position graph. Does your position graph look like this? Does your graph look like that? Because I was looking at the scale graph, which is different because we have both the X and the Y scaling at the same time. So that's why you see the red, which is the X line, and the Y, which is the green line. And that's why it's scaling, it's thinning out right here, and then it squashes in this area, and that's why it kind of looks like it goes into a smooth curve and then into a sharp curve. But like over here, let me do this. If you, when you're in your graph editor, if you click on the scale, it'll look like that. And then if you click on the position, it'll look like, it should look like this one. This is my position graph. Does yours look anything like that? Remember, you want it to look almost like an upside down bounce, right? Because it's at the top of the bounce, right? It's accelerating into that. It's speeding up into that bounce where it hits the ground, and then it's decelerating up into the air, right? So you want it to go fast to the ground and slowly going up into the air, because it's losing that momentum as it goes up into the air. And so that's why the graph looks like the position graph of your bounce should look like this, like almost like a half pipe, right? Like two half pipes put together opposite. I don't know how to explain it, but an upside down bounce also, like if you were to bounce a ball across a room. If you want me to look at your graph, Keith, you can take a screenshot of this and throw it into Slack for me, and we can see what's going on. Also, if you might be working on the speed graph, which is different. This is what the speed graph looks like, and we want to be working in the value graph. And so Just make sure you're in the value graph as well. Yeah. All right. I like this though. I'm going to move forward into coloring this, right? Because I don't like the black and white. I think it could be something different. My timeline ends at 3 seconds right now, which is only going to end up being 3 bounces, right? So I would have to technically extend it. So if I hit Control K, I would just go here and add an extra second in under my composition settings, and then I would just extend the background, or I'd extend the ground, right? Because this is my ground layer. And then I'd extend the ball layer. Yeah, which keyframe changes are you talking about? So I was going to change the timing of the scale, but I opted to not do that. I'm actually going to take this one. So the only thing that I changed on the keyframes here was easing the first and last keyframe of your scale animations. I added some easing to that. And then I just, let me grab these. I went into the graph editor and I selected those 2 keyframes and I just pulled those Bezier handles towards the center more to just exaggerate the speed of the scaling that would happen. And so the only thing I did was easing this one and this one. Everything else really stayed the same. And then I added the motion blur. I hope that helps. Let me know. Yeah, cool, Keith. Yeah, take that screenshot. And also, Lena, I hope this helps you. I hope that helps you out. Let me see here. So let's, I just remember you're moving keyframes around. Yeah, don't worry about moving them around. I was just kind of testing something out, but I didn't like the way it looked. And so I just moved them back. And so they're only, you should have like the squashing starting here. Like if I shut the motion blur off, the squashing should happen right before you hit the ground. And right when you hit the ground is when it squashes. So if you already did this and it was already matching what I had on Tuesday, you don't have to move these around. Don't worry about that. Turning the motion blur back on. Let's go back up here. And let's change the color of this, of the ball. And one thing Lena mentioned last in Slack to me was organizing this. So let me do that for you guys real quick. So we can just keep this nice and tidy and clean. So I'm going to label, I created a folder. I'm going to label it, put an underscore and label it comps so that I can put my compositions into there. And then I'm going to create a new folder and I'm going to name it assets. And then inside of that folder, I'm going to add another one and name it images. And that's where I'm going to take this AE ball PNG and I'm going to drop that right in there just to keep this nice and tidy. Yeah, not a problem. Not a problem, Lena. I'm happy you understand. Thanks for letting me know. But anyways, yeah, I want to change the color of this ball. I want to make the black one color and the white another color. And so I'm going to go into my effects and presets up here on the side. And right here, I'm going to type in Tint. T-I-N-T. And I'm going to take this tint and I'm going to click and drag it to the ball layer. And I'm going to let go. And notice what happens under this area on the left. You see under your effects and controls panel, you get this effect added to the panel, which means that it's applied to this layer. If I click off of this layer, it goes away because it's only applied to the ball layer, right? And that's the only place we want it to. And now what it's going to do is it's going to map whatever color that is black, it's going to map it to whatever color I make that. And then whatever color is white is going to be mapped to a new color that I make it. Oh, okay. Thanks for letting me know. Let me just close. I'm going to just shut my video off for you guys so that you can see that. And I will kind of make the chat smaller here. Is that better for you? So you just go over here to Effects and Presets. You're going to open that. And in your search bar, you'll type in Tint. And you're going to use this one right here. And you're going to click and drag that effect onto your ball layer. This layer right here. And then you'll notice that up here, inside of your effects control, it adds this effect to it. Sweet. Awesome. Thanks for letting me know that. I need to know that kind of stuff so I can move this out of the way, because I know there's a lot in these programs and I want you guys to be able to see everything that I'm doing. All right. So anything that I change in this one will map to the black, and any color that I put in this box will map to the white. And so let's go with like Halloween colors. It's spooky season almost, right? Like I said before, my favorite holiday. So I'm going to just click on this. If you just click on the little box here, you can, the color picker box comes up and you can just kind of drag and find yourself a color that you like. I'm into that purple. And then let's change this to, shall we do another purple or shall we do a green? That's kind of neat, like a lighter purple versus a green. No, I'm into the lighter purple. Okay, cool. And so then I think I'm going to keep all the rest of the balls in my in like the rest of the night, the rest of them that I create. I'm going to keep them the similar color so that everything looks really cohesive when I composite it all together, right? So now that I've got the color of the ball changed, I'm going to show you guys how to now create it, have this bounce happen 4 times, right? Sometimes you can use something called an expression, which is a certain type of coding language that you can attach to parameters on your layer that allow it to do a certain task over and over and over again. But we're going to add an expression later on in the class that's a little bit more advanced. And so right now we're going to just do this the manual way. And we are going to, we can either copy and paste our keyframes, but instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this ball. So, well, let's see here. You can do it a few different ways. I can Control C, select all my keyframes, hitting Control C, and hit Control V to paste. And then move to the next one and hit Control V again, and move to the last one and hit Control V again. And that way the ball is going to bounce up and down. But the problem with that is the easing that we did on the last keyframe. And now all of a sudden when our ball is going into the final position here, it looks really funny and it's kind of slowing down oddly into position and it doesn't look right. And so we're not going to do that. What we're going to do is we're going to just duplicate this layer over 4 times and we're going to sequence it so that it lines up back to back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit U on my keyboard to see my keyframes. I'm going to move my playhead right over to the 1 second, which is on that last keyframe. And I'm going to hit the shortcut Shift Control D. And what that does is it splits the layer up. actually, let's not, yeah, no, we can do that. We'll do that one. And what it does, so now if I go from this one to this one, it is in the perfect place. Like if I zoom in here, it is, if I zoom in to my timeline there, here's the first layer, here's the second layer, and there's no gapping in between, right? That's what we don't want. But the problem is, if I hit U on this layer up here, we still have the animation, but it's happening in the beginning of the timeline where the first bounce on the first ball is. And we want this is like our second bounce, right? We want this to happen over here. So I'm going to select these keyframes. I'm going to drag them over. Just click and drag so that it lines up right here. So that when I play this, so it lines up right at the beginning of the second layer, right? So when I play, it's going to look like a seamless 2 bounce, right? So then I'm going to do that again. I'm going to go to 2 seconds here. I'm going to select that second ball, and I'm going to hit Shift Control D, and then I'm going to hit U on my keyboard, select all these keyframes, and drag them over so that they're right in line with the layer, with where the start of the layer is. And then I'm going to select the third, go to the 3rd second, select the layer, hit Shift Control D, and then hit U, select all these keyframes, and drag them over. And so now, if I go back and hit play, let me just close these out, you have a perfect bounce happening 4 times, right? And all we're doing, we did the bounce 1 time, and then all we had to do was duplicate this layer and shift the keyframes over so that it just lined up with each other, so that each bounce would happen sequentially, right? And just when you're doing this, I just want you guys to make sure, like I'm going to zoom in here, right? And you guys can zoom in really closely when you're doing this too. It's okay to do that. I'm going to zoom in real far, and I'm going to hit U on the second layer and the first layer. I just want you guys to make sure that these are lining up perfectly, right? That on the left side of the playhead is one layer, and right on the right side of the playhead is the other layer, and they touch. You don't want it to look like that, because then all of a sudden you have this missing frame here, and it's going to cause like a flash in your animation. And that's something that a lot of students do at first, and you want to make sure that that's not happening, because it's jarring to watch. Like if I play this, you see that little flash that happened, and then all of a sudden when I go to this one, there's going to be an extra frame there. So we don't want that. So I'm going to just move back over here and just shift that layer over, clicking and dragging this layer. I'm going to shift it over so that they're perfectly in line with each other. How would you reverse that so it can, okay, yeah. So that's a great question, Lena. When you're working in your timeline, like before I had so this is called the work area right here, right? This little bar. And if I play, if this work area is shortened, it will stop wherever this little bar ends, right? But if I want that all the way to the end here, back to the end of the whole composition, I can either click and drag this, or I can hit N on my key. You just move your playhead somewhere else, and you hit N. The N is just going to lengthen or shorten the very end of this work area to wherever your playhead is. Bell's in the chat. What's happening? Yeah, shortcut tip. If you have a mouse, which makes things easier, yeah, you guys, if you guys don't have if you guys are working on a trackpad, I definitely recommend getting a wireless mouse. Or just like a mouse that you can work with. But you can hold Alt and scroll up and down to zoom in on the timeline. So you don't have to grab here. Sometimes I forget that shortcut too. So thanks, Belle, for that. So instead of doing this, you can just hit Alt and then scroll with the scrolling button on your mouse, and it'll go in and out. All right, guys, so I made this change, right? And I don't want to lose this change that I made. So I'm going to go ahead and save that by hitting Control S. And so we have our first ball happening, right? We have our first bounce, our ball inside of After Effects, which has 4 bounces total. And we've got motion blur added to that. We've got some squash and stretch added to that. We've added a floor on here. We've changed the color. And we've done some easing inside of After Effects. We'll talk more about easing. Easing is going to be something that it just takes time to learn. And we're going to do it in every single project. But you're just being introduced into this right now, right? But easing affects the velocity of the keyframes in your animation. Yeah, not a problem, Keith. You were probably in the speed graph. Or in the, let me see. You were in the speed graph and not the value graph. And so your graph looks a lot like this, which is kind of, you know, if you're in the speed graph and your graph looks like this, then you're good. But you can work in the speed graph, but we'll just be working in the value graph while in class. So it'll just be easier this way. All right, so that's saved. We are going to just minimize this for a minute, and we're going to jump into Cinema 4D for the first time. So I'm going to just come here, and I'm going to click the app and open it up. I'll turn my camera on right now, and I will just kind of extend the chat for a second. So, do you guys, by the way, do you like the chat being in the video here? Do you like being able to see that, or do you guys want me to kind of close that out? Because I can do that for you. I know that it kind of blocks some stuff, so... Oh, the period key does it too? Let me check that out. Zooming in the comp? That's what happened just now? That was crazy. Yeah, zooming in on the comp does it that way. Oh, that's cool. Because usually I just use Control plus or minus. But using the period in the comma key kind of is more like full screen and widescreen options. So it just kind of pulls it back a little bit. Full and fit. But that's still, I mean, that's still interesting. I didn't know it did that. There's a lot of shortcuts, you guys, inside of After Effects. And that's why I really recommend going to this Miro board that I have in class for under the homepage. Going here and then watching this video, this shortcuts video here, and it'll tell you a lot of shortcuts, some that you're not going to understand just quite yet, and a lot of them that you will be using every time you work inside of After Effects. And so it's definitely worth watching this video, and it's animated, and it's easier than just reading through a document. But if you want to, there's a document attached to the video, or they tell you where you can get the document that allows you guys to have that on hand if you want to, right? So just letting you guys know. Semicolon. Oh, that's cool. Okay, let me just see here. 1 second. Let me bring this in. And so this, everyone, is Cinema 4D. Whenever you open it, it will look like this. It's going to give you, you know, your learning page here. If you guys want to learn how to do some stuff, these are some great tutorials and tricks and stuff like that that you can watch. There is a YouTube channel, like a Maxon YouTube channel. Let me see what it's called. Cineversity, I think. Maxon Training. Maxon Training Team. These guys, if you guys want to learn some cool stuff inside of Cinema 4D. Since you have it, go ahead and, you guys can watch any of these training videos that they do. It's from the Maxon team, and they work in all of the programs, and you can watch and follow along and create stuff with them. They're long. Some of them are long, some of them are short. They'll go over like new features inside of programs and stuff like that. So I definitely can't recommend this YouTube channel more to you guys. Let me scroll that down. But we're going to create a new project, or actually we're going to be bringing in a template. So I forgot that this project has a template to it. Let me just go to the module real quick. And I'm going to scroll down to the Cinema 4D section, and I'm just going to download this template right here. And I'm going to cut this and move that to my folder here. Fall, we're doing the bouncing ball. And I'm going to move it to 3D folder and put it in the Cinema 4D files folder, because that's going to be my project file folder. And then I'm going to just double click on this and open this up. And I will show you in just a second. It always opens it off on the second screen. So let me just drag this over right now. All right. This always pops up no matter what, so you can just close this out because we're working with a template right now. And when you immediately open the template, you're going to see a couple objects inside of the inside of your project. Right now you have like a platform here, and then you have a ball, and we are going to be making this ball bounce up and down, and we're going to be adding materials to both the platform and the ball. And then I'll be showing you guys how to export this out and as a PNG sequence. And then we'll talk about eventually bringing that into After Effects, compositing it together. And so let me I'm going to shut my camera off again. And I'm going to shut the chat box off again as well. Okay, cool. Yeah, let me shut the chat box off. We don't need that. It's good for like streaming video games and stuff, but I'm not worried about it. These are such technical programs. I want you guys to see everything in them. Okay, cool. And so there's a lot to look at inside of this program as well, but I'm just going to kind of give you an overview of what you're seeing here. This area right here is your it's your stage, and so it's very similar to an After Effects where we see all the work happening, right? There's a couple different views that you can work in on here, but we'll get into that later once in the next project, once we start moving cameras and stuff around. But in the meantime, this is just kind of where all the magic happens, right? On the side over here, we have the toolbar, right? And again, when there are little triangles next to some of these icons, it means that there are additional tools underneath. And so if you just long click on those, you can see additional tools. There are, up at the top here, it shows us different coordinates, right? X is always red, Y is always green, and Z, which is being introduced, is always your third dimension, right? That's going back. You'll see when we look at these, you guys will see that there's a little axis on it, and on there it has all these different colored arrows that represent the different dimensions that we're working in. Up at the top over here, we have just some different kinds of modes that we can select while working with objects. And over in this corner, right over here, we have our material panel right here, which we're going to look a little into today. And then we have some different render options here on how we're going to, like our render settings button and our rendering button over this area. And right underneath it, right here, are some navigational tools that you can use to zoom in on your subjects, move the screen around, rotate things. But I'll show you some shortcuts shortly here. You also have like your objects toolbar right here, where you can add in right here. Oh, let me do, what was that? This one? Yeah. Right here. Where we can add in things like different shaped objects, some text. These are different, like, these are kind of like effects similar to it. Same here. These are deformers, is what they call these little purple ones. And then we have some camera tools here. We have a camera and lighting tool. So this is going to really set like your staging, right? And over here in this panel, this is our object panel right over in this area, right here. And this is where it's almost similar to, it's like if you broke your timeline up in After Effects. This just has all your layers in it, right? So you can see that we have a studio set up for you. And inside the studio is a camera, a key light, a fill light, a target light, and the stage. And then we also have a ball here, right? Now, these are, when we go to start working with these, I want you guys to notice that there's kind of like a hierarchy system, that all of a sudden, if I click this little menu, this little minus thing on the menu there, it's going to kind of furl that up. These are called nulls. Let me show. These here, these little hierarchy folders, are called nulls. They're just something, it's like a blank thing that you can tell it to hold something in, right? And so it's almost like an organizational system here, right? And so we took all of the things of the studio and put it into a studio null and renamed it. And so now if I click on the studio null, right, I can control all of the things that are within that null. Same here with the ball, right? If I click on the ball, I can move it here up and down. And it contains this sphere object inside of here. Now, when we're working with this ball, objects inside of Cinema 4D in the 3D world also have an anchor point. Remember, we talked about anchor points in After Effects. It's the center at which all of your action and motion and animation happens around. And they look different inside of Cinema 4D. They look like this kind of little square type thing, and then protruding out from that square are these different arrows, which show the direction, like which coordinate you're looking at, right? So this is your Y, your X, and then your Z. If I were to grab the Z, there you go. It's moving it back and forward in space. Okay. Let me just kind of move back there. Now, when you're starting to animate this ball, you want to make sure that you're selected on the null, the ball null. This one, it's so much fun to say, the ball null. You want to select that one there and animate that null layer. Do not animate the sphere layer. The reason being is the null has the anchor point down at the bottom of the ball, which will drive the motion. And remember, when we worked in After Effects, that was important when we started scaling, right? And so we want to work with the null. We're going to be animating that and not the sphere, because if I grab onto the sphere, notice that the anchor point is in the center of the ball. So all you guys have to do is just furl that up, and you don't even have to look at it, right? Because anything that happens to this null will consequently happen to everything within the null, right? Within that folder. essentially. And so you guys can play around with these, but I don't want you to delete them or anything. They're not going to let you delete them because they have something called a protection tag on them, which is these little guys right here. These little tags that show kind of like a no, don't pass go, don't collect $200 things, those are protection tags. And so that just kind of locks these items so that you can't move them around and mess with them. And I'm going to just furl this up because we're not going to really be working with that at the moment. I'm going to furl up the ball. And the other thing I want to show you, okay, so down here at the bottom, the timeline looks different than, like the animation timeline looks different than what you see inside of After Effects. So let me just kind of highlight the timeline right here. Notice that you have your frames, right? The first, second, third, fourth frame, etc. on the way down. Here we have a total of 48 frames, which is reiterated right here, where you can manually, I think, grab and say, like, if I put 24, it's going to shorten the amount of frames that are showing there. So we'll put 48 in. And we have our play buttons, right? You can skip to the beginning. You can move to a previous frame using this one. Move to a previous keyframe when you have a keyframe on the timeline, etc. This is one way to keyframe. So remember we had stopwatches inside of After Effects. Here is another option on how to keyframe inside of Cinema 4D, although I'm going to show you a different way to use this, and I will tell you why in a bit when we get there. And then here, this little purple rectangle right here is your playhead, right? And so wherever you move this playhead is where you're going to end up keyframing. So we want to make sure that that's at the beginning of the timeline here. And this when you click on this button, it expands that timeline so that we can start to see our keyframes when we start putting them down onto our timeline here. Now, notice that I can move this as the playhead, or I can also come up here and grab this. It is also a playhead. They will just look different. This is more of like a compact view of what you're seeing here. This is going to show you your graph. So this is like your dope sheet view, right? This bottom section here. Or I'm sorry, this top section is your dope sheet view. And then we'll be able to change it to your F curve, which is also your graph editor, right? Just different terminology, same things. And we're just learning to navigate the program. And so right now, this would be the graph view over here. I clicked this button right here. That's your graph view. It's also called F-curve mode. And then if I click on this one with the little diamond, that is your dope sheet view, right? So you're going to see keyframes along your timeline in here, which look different. They will look different. You guys will see. And then when we're ready to start easing or messing with the velocity and stuff, we'll go into that F-curve view and we'll update that. On the side over here, on this area, we have your attributes panel, right? This will change with whatever you're working in. Whatever kind of object that you have selected, it will look different when you have different stuff inside of your object panel selected. This can change up, right? And you'll see what I mean as I move along. But inside of here, right, this is basic. We're selected on the ball. And if I go over to the basic panel, it's just going to show me some details about that layer. I can rename it if I want to. I can change some other objects here if I want to. But you guys won't really be using this. When Lena asked, when you create a new project in Cinema 4D, are there certain presets or settings we have to adjust? Yes, there will be. So similar to inside of After Effects when you're updating your composition settings, you'll update settings inside of Cinema 4D as well. Thankfully, right now, this has all been set up for you because you guys are working with a template, but we will eventually do that. In fact, we probably will, if we're doing one single bounce in 24 frames, we're going to need to make this 24 times 4. So let's do that actually now, Lena. Good call. And so I'm going to hit Control. I think it's Control K, J. Which one is it? Nope. I did something different. Project settings. Let me get. I opened a new. I hit Control N. Don't hit that because I just opened a new thing. I think it's Control D, right? Yeah, because that's what Shift V. I posted a video on Slack that will have a guide on what those settings are to change it. Yeah, it is Shift V. There we go. Holding down Shift V. Let me write that down for you guys here. Shift plus V, V as in Victor, equals your, those are your viewport settings, which will come in handy later, right? But we want to get to the project settings, which are going to be, here is a great way for you guys to find something. If you hit Shift C, you're going to come up with a command center here. And in here, you can just type project settings and hit enter. It should come up here. It was just thinking for a second. Shift C, project settings. There we go. And it is Control D. I'm just not sure why it wasn't working for me. But if I click that, it'll take me to the project settings. So let's write that down again. Thanks, Belle, for being there. I appreciate it. Not shit, but shift. Shift plus V equals viewport settings. All right, which will come in handy later. Control plus D equals project settings. And we want to go in the project settings right now. This is where we want to be. And so in here, you notice that there's frames per second, FPS. There's our project time, which you never really mess with. You're more or less messing with your time max, which is going to be how long your animation is going to be. And so we always want it at 24 frames a second. When you guys are working inside of here, it should always be at 24 frames a second. And yeah, I know. The fun typing. The word shift is always fun. It's always a crapshoot when you're typing the word shift on what it's going to be, depending on how fast your brain is like sending the signals to your fingers on how to type it, but hilarious. So your time max is what we're going to want to do to increase the length of our animation. And thankfully, this does all the math for us, just like in Cinema 4D, or I'm sorry, in After Effects. And so all I have to do is type in 24 times 4 seconds, so 24 frames, right? I want 24 frames and I want it 4 seconds long. And I'm going to hit enter, and that's 96 frames, which equals 4 seconds. And so now I'm going to have that entire bounce sequence in here if I wanted to do it this way. All right, so let's just kind of get started with animating that. So again, Lena, you just want to hit the Control D, come in here to FPS, make sure that it's 24 frames a second, and we'll increase this time to either 96 frames, or you can type in the math and just hit enter, and it automatically does that for you. And so I'm going to select the ball layer now. And I want to start this bounce up at the top of the at the top of the bounce like I did before. So I want to make sure that my playhead is in the beginning of the timeline. I'm going to grab this green arrow here. I'm going to drag that arrow up. Now notice when I drag this arrow, what is happening over in this section, right? Because all of a sudden now, this attributes panel, when I selected that ball, it changed and it's showing us the coordinates tab here. And inside of that coordinates tab, you have all of these selections or these options to work with. And when I started moving the Y dimension, like the Y position of the ball, it started to change this setting there, right? It went from 0 and now it's increasing as I move that ball. So these are your transform properties, right? You know how we have scale, rotation, position inside of After Effects? We also have position, right? Here, let me make this less messy looking right now. There we go. We have position right here. We have rotation right here. And then we have scale right here. And you can see that S is for scale, rotation, position. We don't have opacity here. We would work with that in a different, using different parameters and stuff. But these are the basic ones that you work with inside of Cinema 4D. Now, instead of just being an X and a Y value, we also have a third coordinate here, which is your Z coordinate position. So, because we're working in 3 dimensions, right? 1, 2, 3, X, Y, Z. Always red, green, blue. Whenever you're looking at, they're called like the gyroscope. What are these things called? Belle, do you remember what they're called? I'm pretty sure there's like a name for it. I know Belle will remember. She's got like, I do not have elephant memory, but I'm like the thing. It's the thing that's in the middle of the ball. No. This has a name. Like I just call it like the access point, right? It has the gizmo. See, exactly what I was, you know how I should relate that is like, with, dang it, now my brain's gonna slip on this too, but the movie with the little gremlins, that's it. Gizmo was his name. This is your gizmo, right? Don't put it in water. You have selective memory. Well, you have the appropriate selective memory. My memory is like really random facts, which no one needs. They're always facts that everyone's like, wow, why would I ever need to know that? Unless I'm on like a game show with questions and stuff. But okay, so we have our different coordinates here. And just like inside of After Effects, we're only going to be animating the bounce on the Y value, on the Y coordinate here. And so I'm going to bring that ball up here. I'm probably going to go in here manually and type in 550 so it's at an even number there. Because like I said earlier, I like even numbers. And next to these coordinate options and these parameters are a little diamond shape, which is your keyframe. And I'm going to go ahead and click on that keyframe, and it's going to turn red, which means that it's being recorded, that motion has been recorded, that coordinate's been recorded. And now notice that down in your timeline, we have a keyframe thrown on here, right? There's different like buttons. There's like 2 different sections here, and it has to do with the ball and the position. But just know that this is just one keyframe, okay, you guys? And now I'm going to move my playhead over to 12th frame, right? Half a second, where I want the ball to be down on the platform. And I'm going to grab that, the Y coordinate here, and I'm going to drop that down so that the ball makes contact with the platform here. And now normally you would just move your playhead inside of After Effects, but notice when I did that the ball jumped right up to the top again. That is because unlike in After Effects where it automatically records your change, Cinema 4D does not. You manually have to record that change. So I'm going to move that ball down, and then I have to go back over to the Y coordinate in my attributes panel, and I have to record that change, right? If it's yellow before, it means that it needs to be recorded. It's like a little warning to you. Hey, you've made a change here. Let's record it, right? And so I'm going to actually type in 0 there. Probably actually -10, so it goes down just a little bit further. And then I'm going to keyframe that. And now I'm going to move my playhead over to 24, and we want it back up to that 550 position coordinate on the Y like we had in the beginning. But, right, we want to work smarter and not harder. And so instead of having to bring this up or type that in and record it, which you can do, but we can always just come over to here, hit Control and click and drag on the first keyframe, and it just copies and pastes that keyframe to wherever my playhead is, right? And obviously that could have moved anywhere, but I just wanted to make sure that it was in line with the 24th frame. Now, is this making sense to you guys? Are you guys I know this is a lot. This is the second software that we're in, and we're just kind of learning everything, but do you guys have any questions so far? Just let me know in the chat, or let Belle know and she'll help. So, we have our first bounce down, right? This is awesome. Let us go ahead and, so if I play, it goes up and down. Notice that when I do play it, it's slowing down. The ball is slowing down before it hits the ground, and we do not want that, right? This automatically inside of Cinema 4D, I'm sorry, I'm trying to switch my brain to the different program. Inside of Cinema 4D, whenever you animate something, it actually automatically is eased. So how do I know this? I'm going to select all of my keyframes here. Just by clicking and dragging off of the graph. I highly suggest that when you're going to select keyframes, you don't just click on like this. This is the same in any other program, right? You click off to the side and you drag like a selection box over the ones that you want to work with. It's just going to make it so you're not moving things around. It's just a little easier there. I'm sure it'll make more sense when I try it. Yeah, it will. And when you go back to watch it again and stuff, it'll help as well. And so I've got those keyframes selected, and I'm going to go into my F curve mode, and notice that this is not linear, right? If it were linear, they would look like this. I'm going to go ahead and click, right here it's defaulted to easing, right? And this is linear right here. So if I were to click linear, they're going to be a straight line, right? Remember how those looked inside of the graph editor, inside of After Effects? But we don't want that. We don't want it to be at a consistent speed. We want to adjust that velocity. And so it's going to come like this, which is fine. But we have to adjust this to look like that bounce that we wanted. Now, inside of Cinema 4D, the graph editor looks like it's in the appropriate coordinate. I know we were talking about the graph last class, and how when you're looking at a graph like this, your stage inside of After Effects is this quadrant, and the graph is this one. That's not the same in this inside of Cinema 4D. And so we're just going to grab that, and we're going to Command Z. Let me see. I think it's not Control, but is it Shift? Yeah. I'm going to hold down Shift, and I'm going to grab this Bezier handle, right? This one right here, and I'm going to just drag that up. Now, you don't want to drag it higher than where your initial keyframe is right here. You want to make sure that this is below that. Let me make this bigger for you guys to see right here. And notice when I expanded the graph, like all of a sudden my stuff disappeared. If that happens and you're inside of your graph here, even if you're inside of the dope sheet, right, you can hit the letter H on your keyboard and it will center your graph for you, which is nice. But you want to make sure that you're not dragging this Bezier handle above this keyframe that you have at the beginning. And the reason why is because then your graph overshoots. It goes above where that keyframe is, and we don't want overshooting to happen inside of the graph right now. So let me just undo that. Oh, cool. B also breaks it. Nice. That's great. Let me hit H again. Oh, like auto breaks it. I want to bring these, remember, I want these kind of like in the same spot, right? Because I want my bounce to be pretty equal on both ends. And then I'm going to grab this keyframe over here, and I'm going to drag this one holding down Shift. Or is it Control? Yeah, the commands are different. I'm going to hold down Control and drag, so it locks that into place, right? I'm going to drag that from the number 4 that it was at. I'm going to drag that to the number 6, so we have a nice, a really exaggerated bounce happening here. And so I'm going to click and hold down Control and drag here. So it was 20, we went 2, so I'm going to go back 2. We went forward 2 frames over here. I'm going to go backwards 2 sections over this way. And so now when I play it, it should accelerate quickly to the platform and then decelerate on the way up. Let me just hit play there. There we go. We have a nice strong bounce happening right here, right? And this is the single bounce. We want it to happen 4 times. And so we'll duplicate this here in a minute. But at the moment, the bounce looks nice and strong there, right? Just go back there. I'm going to pause that, bring it back here. Now I'm going to go back to my dope sheet view. And I'm going to shorten this right here. And do you know, I think it's, if I hold down 1, what is it? 1 and the click. 2. Okay, yeah, if I hold down 2 on my keyboard and click and drag my mouse around, it will expand or contract the size, like it'll minimize or expand the timeline in here for you to work with. So that you can see, like if you're like, oh, I have keyframes over here that I can't see, you can do that. And then if you hold down 1, if you click 1 and hold down 1 and click and drag, you can move along your timeline here. So that's pretty neat too. Yep. 1 to pan, 2 to zoom. Cool. All right, guys, so now let's add in that squash and stretch that we've been talking about, right? And so we're going to go into the halfway point when the ball hits the platform, and we're going to add our squash first, and then we'll add our stretch after. And so I'm going to go back and I'm going to select the ball, and we are going to be animating the scale of the ball. But we want to make sure that we are animating and changing the scale in all 3 coordinate directions, right? So we don't want to just scale the ball on one side. For this one, you don't want to squish it this way and then expand it this way, but not expand it this way, right? Because the key to animation and in the squash and stretch and stuff is retaining volume, retaining the weight of that ball, right? And the dimension, the mass of that ball. That you don't, even when they're hand animating cartoons and stuff, you have to keep that in mind as wanting to keep it the same size. We're just changing the shape, right? We're not changing the mass, the density, or the volume of the object. We are just changing the shape and maybe stretching it in different ways. And so it's important that when we're doing this, that we're remembering whatever we add to one coordinate, we deduct from the other coordinates, the other 2, right? So, we're going to be squashing the ball. The ball's going to flatten down here. And so that is going to be the X parameter, right? And so I'm going to, we want to drop it down. We're going to go below 1 because it always starts off at 1. It's going to always default at 1. That's the original ratio of whatever your object is, right? And so I'm going to just go 0.8 here. And because I deducted, in fact, let's do it a little bit more dramatic, right? 0.75. Working in like, how do I say it? Like, you know, like -10, -15, -25. Easy things to do, easy math for yourself, right? Just remember, easier math is better. So because I deducted 0.25 from the y coordinate to squish it, I have to add 0.25 to not only my x coordinate, but also to my y coordinate. So now it's going to be 1.25 on my x and 1.25 on my z axis, right? And I'm going to go ahead and I am going to keyframe all 3 of those so that when that ball hits the ground, it's going to squish out. Now we want the ball, just like before, we want to make sure that right before this happens, it's still in the stretch phase. So I'm going to move, we're going to animate backwards again. And so I'm going to move the playhead over 1 keyframe behind. And I am going to reverse this, right? So I'm going to go 0.75 on the X, 1.25 on the Y because we want it to be long, and 0.75 on the Z axis. And remember to record, right? And then we're going to move back again, and we want it to be close to like the regular size, the normal scale, right around the beginning of the bounce. So I'm going to move to the 3rd keyframe here, and I am going to type in 1, 1, 1, because I want it at the original scale, and then I'm going to keyframe those. Nice. And then what I want to do is I'm going to unfurl this ball here, and note it. I'm going to grab the scale options, and I am going to take this one right here, and I'm going to hit Control, and I'm going to drag that there. So I've copied this keyframe here, right? So it's stretching, it hits and squashes, and then it goes back up, right? Squash up. We might move these around. We're just kind of blocking out this animation right now. And then I want to go to my last keyframe here, and I'm going to move backwards 3 frames. 1, 2, 3. So we're still at an equal distance from the original scale, right? And I'm going to grab the original scale keyframes. Notice that when I hover over these keyframes, it will give me the value of whatever it is I'm working in. So here it shows 111, so I know I've grabbed the correct keyframes. And if I hover over this one right here, it gives me my 0.75, 1.25, 0.75. So just kind of a way that you can see which ones you're on. And I'm going to hit Control, and I'm going to drag those over as well. And so now we have, we've reversed what we just did in the beginning. And so now it's the exact same bounce that we had before. In fact, we can take these, maybe scooch these over 1, because this bounce is happening the same way it's going down, the same thing's happening when it's coming up on this ball. And so we want it to look like mirrored, right? From the center, we want everything on this side to look the same as this side. Lena asked in the chat, do all 3 balls have to bounce at the same time? Yes. And that is why we're animating all the balls at 1 second at 24. One full bounce happens in 1 second, or 24 frames, right? So that when I duplicate this over 4 seconds, the ball will bounce 4 times, the same as here in After Effects. Over 4 seconds, the ball bounces 4 times. And when I bring this into, when I bring my PNG sequence of my Cinema 4D ball into After Effects, you'll see that. You'll see that happening. And so now I have the full bounce happening there, but I do want to bring this over the full amount of time, right? I want this to happen I want this bounce to occur 4 times. And so what I'm going to do is I am going to, what did you say, Belle? What was the, to zoom is 2. Yeah. I'm going to zoom out all the way until we get to the 96 frames. Kind of, I think I can pan over this way. There we go. So I just kind of want to center it so I can see everything. So I can see all my frames here. And I'm going to select all of them. And we're going to put my playhead right here. And we are going to copy that bounce. Right? So I'm just going to I'm going to select all my keyframes. These are all this is the position keyframes. When it's highlighted in orange or yellow is when you select your property on the side, it will highlight that property in the orange or yellow, so you know which keyframes are which, right? So if you want to just shift and select those properties together like that, you can do that from this little side panel here, or you can just drag and select like this. But I'll just select that, and I'm going to just control and then drag these together. But we want to line up the keyframes from the beginning to the end. When we're dragging this, we want to line those up together. And so I'm going to go over here to my 48th frame, which is the second, and I'm going to click and drag again, right? And I want to just make sure that these two overlap each other because they're the same value. Just remember that we're creating a loop, right? If I had it over here, let me do this again. If I had it, make sure you're holding down that control. If I had it over here, we're just adding extra keyframes in between the 40th keyframe and whatever frame we're at over here, where it's doing nothing. And so the ball would freeze up there. And we don't want that to happen. So we want to make sure that this set of keyframes right here is overlapping this last set of keyframes here. They're the same value. It's going to look like a seamless loop. And then we're going to go over here and we're going to do it one more time. And so then you're going to notice that we end perfectly on the 96th frame over in the back here. And then we duplicated it 4 times, meaning that we have 4 separate bounces happening. 3, 4. And then it plays it again. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have our 4 full bounces happening on our Cinema 4D ball. I know this looks like a lot. It is a lot to process and to kind of and to, like, you know, absorb at once, because you're like, oh gosh, there's so many different things. We're now including an extra dimension, right? So I want you guys to not focus on all of the stuff that you see up and around here, like your tools and all this stuff. Don't focus on that right now. We just went through the navigation of the software just for you guys to kind of see and be able to open it up and be like, okay, here's the tools, here's our object panel, here's our attributes panel, timeline, this and that, just very basic stuff. But I want you guys to really focus on these keyframes and putting these keyframes down and making sure that whenever you make a change on something, you're making sure to record that change, right? Making sure that you're clicking that. So now you can tell that that change was made, because if I move my playhead over onto any of the keyframes, you can see what is actually keyframed inside of your coordinates panel, right? Inside of your transform properties. But we'll just play this over again, and we can just watch it sit there and bounce. I think it looks nice. I think that the bouncing on this looks pretty good to me. I like the graph of the position keyframes. So that's another thing, right? So I selected the position transform property over here in the far left corner. And then I'm going to go to my F curve, and you can see that it looks like an actual bounce that's actually happening with the ball. But all of those changes that I made to the curve, they all applied to each copy that I made, right? Because all I was doing was duplicating it. But you want to make sure that at the beginning, right here, it's only like a half a bounce, right? And at the end, it's only a half a bounce up. So then this will make a seamless loop. You want to make sure that your curve looks just like this before you guys export it, okay? All right, so we have the bounce happening. Let's add some materials over to this ball, because right now, if I do something called a render preview, I'm going to hit Control R, and that's going to just show me a preview of what my render is going to look like. It looks kind of like a default clay. This is just, this is the default kind of look that you get with all of the 3D software. It's just a very natural kind of clay, very flat material to it. But we've already prepared some materials inside of this the material manager up here. And so when you guys open the project up, this material manager is going to be closed. But I'm just going to click it and open that up. And notice that we've made materials here for you. Now, I've had students, one is named platform and one is named ball. That's totally fine. I've had students apply the platform material to the ball and the ball material to the platform. I don't care. As long as like the colors of your project are consistent throughout, right? Because we've done let's see here. I did an orange floor because I was just sticking to Halloween, whatever, because we're coming up on it. And a purple ball, a purple striped ball, which actually is very close to this right here, right? But let's change the platform here. We'll update that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click and drag this platform material over to the actual platform, and notice that it changes right away. And now if you hit Control R to view that render preview, we have some color added. We have a material added onto our platform. I am going to, let me click off of this. Let me see if I can do something else real quick. I am going to expand the amount of rotation segments so that it looks a little smoother around the edge. Oops, I accidentally clicked off of it. I'm going to click back onto, if I just click on my stage right there, I can increase these rotation segments. And notice what it does is it increases the amount of rotations that are around that platform. And then if I hit Control R, it just kind of smooths that out a little bit more. If I'm going to watch what happens if I increase it all the way and then I hit Control R. See, it's really nice and smooth around that edge. That's okay. It is adding geometry. So geometry is these little segments around here, right? Each one of these is called a polygon, and each one of those polygons, if they move, does a lot to the way your computer processes 3D 3D animations, right? But we're not going to be moving this platform, so it's okay if I increase the segments a lot, because we're not going to be animating that. I just want it to kind of look smooth around the edge. So the three balls and platform have to be the same colors. I appreciate a consistent color palette. It doesn't have to be the same colors, but if the colors are within a color, like an appropriate color palette, I just enjoy that more. It just looks better because these are projects that we're going to be putting in our portfolio at the end of class. These are projects that will eventually help you get jobs, right? And so the better they are in the realm of design, the stronger that the video is for you, right? And so this class is based all off design, right? Everything we're doing is artistic. And so we have to take design principles into consideration as well. That comes with text, that comes with color choices and framing of your scenes, right? And so if you guys have taken design classes before, I'm sure you've heard about, different color, like analogous colors and monochromatic colors and complementary colors and different things on the color wheels, right? That I would like you guys like applying to your projects. And so you can have different colors, but they should look good together, considering things like contrast and saturation. Because you don't want everything the same saturation, because then it just looks boring, right? If there's no contrast, things fall into each other and it's hard to differentiate objects and subjects in your scene. So just keeping those things in mind, right? You can do some fun stuff. Just think to yourself, is this appropriate design? And so I'm going to take the ball and I'm going to apply the ball material right over here. And I'm going to apply, just clicking and dragging that to the ball over here. And I do want to change the stage, right? I wanted to change the stage color. And so in order to do that, I'm going to double click into my platform material here, just right up here inside of my material manager. And this material editor will show up here. And inside of the color channel, you can change the color of the ball or of the material right here on your color sliders, right? And so mine was orange, so I'm going to just kind of keep it consistent. It's kind of a darker orange. So let's kind of increase this a little bit. And I have a nice dark orange that should be close to that one. Looks pretty close to me. Let me just hit Control R on here. Yeah, I think those are close. And then I'm going to select the ball and I'm going to change the colors here. So in order to change the color of the ball stripes, you can double click on the material up here, or down in the attributes panel it shows up as well. But I just double click there. And then this texture right here where you see the stripes, I'm just going to double click on that. And that allows me to change the color of each of these. So mine was more of a purple, right? So I'm going to go here, drop that kind of down that way, bring this up, probably make it a little bit darker. And then I'm going to color pick that one, and then I'm going to double click it and just drop the saturation of that. And then I'm also going to just slightly shift the hue a little bit to more of a blue color, so that we have more of like this purple, the dual purple that I have going on in the first one. You can do that. I can color pick in Cinema 4D from After Effects. Get out. Let me try. Oh, that's cool. So if I just go... Oh, that color's neat. I didn't think about that, but like, I mean, I guess I could just, what I could do is click on this and you can copy your hex code like that, and then go back into Cinema 4D, double click onto here, get into here, and under this color, there's a way to get the hex code. I think it's... Yes. Okay, so if you guys don't want to pick your color like this and you want to have it exactly the same, you can click these little arrows and you click this little hashtag and you can put it's called a hex code, and you can type that in, and so they match exactly. Let me do that actually. Copy that one. Go back into here, back into my material editor right here, click this, go into my code, and do this. Not too far off. I did pretty good visually guessing. You can even move the color between both objects on the top right. I'm not quite sure what you're saying, Keith. Between both objects on the top right. Like up here? Is that what you're saying? Like moving the tag around? I'm going to change this color. I'm going to type in the hex code for that one. Which for the solid there, I'm just going to double click on this. Actually, I'm going to click out of there, right? Go back to my composition. I'm going to select that layer, and I'm going to go up to layer and then solid settings, and I can see the settings of that. And I can just literally copy the hex code from there and then go into here and type it in here. Nice. So I have the same ones. Ooh, that's rather reddish looking there, but it looks cool. Yeah, I've been messing with it on my own time. That's awesome. I'm super happy that you have been playing around in Cinema 4D on your own time, because yeah, that's really cool. Now here's where the problem lies in this, right? Is like throwing the tags onto the objects in here. If you start to throw too many tags onto one, it will start to become an issue, right? But you can just replace them in here like that, right? If you wanted to. If you wanted to do so, you can replace it like that. But if you don't want that, if all of a sudden you delete this, it's going to go back to that, and you can just click and drag that material back on there. So you just want to make sure that you don't have too many materials or missing materials in here, because if you delete materials out of your material manager, it will delete them from your object as well, or it will cause like an issue from it, right? So if I deleted this, all of a sudden it's gone from there. So I don't want to do that. But all right, so I'm going to save this, and we want to export. I'm going to move along on here real quick because I want to get to Adobe Animate. But we want to export this as a PNG sequence. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here to my render settings. It is the little button that is up in the top that has the little cog gear right in there, and you want to click on that. Now you want to make sure that these render settings match what you did in your project settings. And so I wanted to make sure that my render settings, when I click on the output here, you want to make sure first that you're in the standard renderer right here. So if you're not, you just want to click on here and you click on the standard. And on your output section, you want to make sure that you're 1920 by 1080 right here. 72 DPI, that's okay. You don't have to change that. Don't worry, you won't change that all season. You don't have to worry about that. But you do want to make sure that you are in 24 frames a second. And the other thing that you want to make sure is that when you're on your frame range, this is where it renders. It's going to render whatever you have on here. So right now it would only render out one frame for me because it's just, it's selected to current frame, and we want it to say all frames on there. So I'm going to just drop that menu down. I'm going to hit all frames. You can always do a range, right? Like if I didn't want to do all of them, I can just drag this back, but I do want to do all of them. So I'll just select that. Now the next setting we go to is save on the side over here. And this is going to, this is where we're going to select where we want this PNG sequence to save. And because we created that template folder, right, that had the 3D folder in it, because I went to we're in the class folder, I went to the semesters, to my project, I'm going to go to the 3D folder, and in that folder I put a blank folder that says PNG sequences. I'm going to select that folder. And so it's going to dump all of these PNG images together, which will sequence together inside of After Effects to become like a scene, a movie, right? And so it's going to dump that all into that folder that we have. And that's where we want to keep all these PNG sequences, because it is going to render out an image for each one of these frames that we have. So we're going to have 96 different photos. So you don't want this going on your desktop or going in a different folder that you don't want it, or with another set of PNG sequences. You want to stay nice and organized, right? So that's why I created that folder in this 3D one for you, so that you would have a spot to put those sequences at. Format PNG, that's great. Always keep it to that. The 8-bit channel, that's fine. Don't worry about changing the name. Don't do that. This is the one you want to make sure that you have on here. We want to make sure that this PNGs are exporting with the alpha channel, because if not, then it's going to have a background, and we don't want that because we're manually going to add a background into After Effects with this, right? And so I want to make sure that that alpha channel is selected on. And then we're going to close out of the render settings. That's all we have to do in there. And then we're going to go up here and we are going to hit render to picture viewer. And so what this is doing is it has opened up, let me see if I can, there you go. If I just move around here, you can see that it's rendering all these pictures. It's doing this rather fast. My computer has my computer works really fast. All these little squares on here that you see like popping up are different cores that your CPU has. So depending on how many cores that your computer has will depend on how many are showing up at a time, right? So if you have 12 cores, it will have 12 different boxes rendering things at one time on here. If you only have 8, it's only going to be 8. So this, when it comes to 3D animation and rendering things out, it takes a long time. This is a rather simple animation, so it's not that big of a deal. But when we start moving into other things, you're going to notice that the more and more stuff and objects that you have inside of your scene, the more intense it is on your GPU and your CPU to process all of that information to create an image, right? And so sometimes those will be going, because we don't have a background on here, this black is transparency, so that's pretty easy for the computer to read. There's like, oh, there's no information, there's zero data in this black spot, so we don't need to worry about that. The only data that we have to render or to process is like the ball in the platform. Great, that's not a problem. But this is something to keep in mind. So when you're working with 3D projects, you want to give yourself enough time to render. You're going to start to realize that very soon once we start working in other programs. But I'm just going to minimize Cinema 4D now. And I am going to, inside of our bouncing ball project here, I'm going to go over to my project panel. And I'm going to take this composition right here. I'm going to create a new comp. I want to create a main folder or a main composition where we're going to composite all 3 balls together, right? And so I'm going to just click on this create a new comp button right there. And I am going to name this one up here in the composition name. I'm going to hit underscore main comp. And I'm going to extend this to probably 6 seconds because we're going to add a title in there at some point. And it's going to be blank, but I want to bring in that After Effects bouncing ball that I did. So I'm going to grab that composition up here, and I'm going to just drag that down into this comp. And I am going to, so notice that we have the ball bouncing here. Inside of this main comp, we can add a background. So let's add a solid background. We're going to let's go a little lighter than this one. We'll kind of stick with that. I'm going to drag that down here. I am going to change that. I'm not a fan of that color. New, solid. Let's do something with these, like a very light, not quite white, but just a very light pale purple. Let's see if that looks a little better. Okay, that doesn't bother me as much. This is what I'm talking about, Lena, with contrast, is notice I picked a very, very, very light purple, like a very pale purple for the background, so that background didn't compete with the ball, right? Because the purple, there's 3 different purples in the scene right now, but that purple for the background is so light that it's not competing for the ball. I'm not having to try and find where this is or losing any of the colors in the ball that I did. Keith asked, so the rendering process takes more toll on the CPU. Would the final product be as well? The final product no, because we've already exported it out of Cinema 4D. So when you bring it into After Effects, yeah, I mean, it'll take longer to render inside of After Effects, but not nearly as long as how long it takes to process the actual image. So like when I'm bringing this into here right now, when I bring this PNG sequence of what we just rendered into here, it'll play back rather smoothly, and it's not going to take as long to render inside of After Effects as it does inside of Cinema 4D, but it will take longer. It will take it will take a while, but not as long as it takes for Cinema 4D to fully process it. Because at that point it's already an image sequence. It's already been compressed and exported as an image sequence. And so with that being said, let's import in that PNG sequence. So in the images folder, or you can add a PNG sequence folder. Actually, we can just do it like that. Let's go ahead and hit Control I for import under our image folder. And we're going to navigate over to that folder that we just put that sequence in. And now instead of having to control, like shift and select all of them, After Effects is smart enough to recognize when there's like an actual sequence happening. It can see that there's the name of the image has the 000, and it can see that it's sequentially numbering up, and so it's automatically, when I select this, it's going to recognize that it is a PNG sequence, and so it's going to import all of these images in one like layer versus having a bunch of different separate images. And so when you select this, you just want to make sure that PNG sequence is selected, is checked right down there. And when I do that, I'm going to hit import, and it is going to import that sequence in two different ways. It is going to create a separate composition right there, and then it's also going to create a separate PNG sequence. And so the composition you can just drag in there, but this PNG sequence, we want this to be inside of your main folder. In fact, this one right here is named incorrectly. So I'm just gonna, under my projects panel, I'm just gonna select that, and I'm gonna hit enter, and I'm just gonna put C4D. I don't know why it had AE, but it should be C4D. There we go. And it has ball twice. I don't know why I did that. Maybe it was the way I had it named, or is the way I selected it. And I think it's the naming convention that I had on the PNG sequence. Let me just double check that. I'm pretty positive that's what it is. Yeah, so that when you're inside of these render settings here, under the Save tab, you can change, when you go over here to select where you put it, you could change the name. So it should have said C4D Ball Bouncing Ball, right? So in fact, I could select all of these and delete them, but I'm not going to do that. You guys will just want to do that before you go to render them out. So I don't know if I can name it. Let me try and rename it here, but I don't think it will. Don't worry about that. I accidentally clicked. Let's try it. Let's see what happens. We're just going to test this theory out. Does it work? Okay, it still works. It still does. Nice. Notice that the bounces are pretty much the same, right? They're almost the same. They're a little different. But when I drag this PNG sequence on the timeline, it isn't the same, right? It should be 4 seconds. We're missing, there's something happened, right, in the process of bringing this into After Effects. And what happened is, up here, remember how I told you all the information you can see on your layers is up in here? When it imports a PNG sequence, it imports it at 30 frames a second. And that's not right. We rendered it out at 24 frames a second. And so we want that to be, we want to fix this, right? And so what do we do to do that? We're going to right click on this PNG sequence layer, and we're going to go to Interpret Footage, and we're going to hit Main. And under frame rate here, we're going to type in 24 because we want it to match the rest of the project. And then I'm going to do the same thing here to this composition. I am going to, in fact, I can just open this composition up. Let me slide this over here real quick so we get a little bit more to view. And I'm going to select in the timeline on this composition. I'm going to hit Control K, and I'm just going to go in here and change this to 24. 24 frames a second. It's short right now. It's only 3 seconds long, which we need to extend that to 4. And hit enter. And then extend this layer, right, in case we ever brought that into the main comp, right? But we're going to extend this one right here and line those up and then play it and the balls bounce at the same time. And so here, let me hit end there so that it'll repeat. It does that because we are short of frame there. Let me do that. But now we have a seamless loop happening for our ball bounce. And we obviously don't want this ball to be overlapping the other After Effects one we did. So we're just going to grab this PNG sequence over here in our layer, and we're just going to scoot that over. I put caps. If you accidentally hit caps lock while you're working, it works weird with like the way your computer looks at the comp, and then all of a sudden it'll do some weird stuff and it won't let you see that. So you just have to turn that off. And we're gonna maybe scale this just slightly so that it fits in here a little bit better. Maybe I'll just scale it by like 10% down so that fits in here nicely. And then just making sure that they maybe start in the same area. I'm going to grab this After Effects composition, the bouncing ball that I put in here, and I'm going to scale that down just slightly, maybe to 90% again. But I want to make sure that the balls, I first want to make sure that we're getting cut off there because I've scaled the composition. And so we just want to make sure that that is hidden down here, that we're not seeing that seam. And we want to try and get it centered. A way you can see the center of your composition, there is a little button right here, this little guy. And if you click it, it says Title Action Safe. This is something that is used inside of film and video, inside of like video cameras and stuff, to see what your proportions are and where your framing is. And so we just kind of want to center this up. Our composition comes with an anchor point as well, and we just kind of want to line the anchor point up with the crosshair of the center of the Title Action Safe. Now this Title Action Safe will not render in your final video whenever you go to render. It's just something that happens in your work area. It's kind of like guides for you, like rulers and stuff. And so I actually keep this on because this helps guide me to where I should put text and stuff. And these are different based on aspect ratios of TV. In fact, this inner square right here is a 4:3 aspect ratio, which was the old televisions, the box TVs that you used to see with the big old glass screens and the big wood outside, like those old school televisions you see on TV and movies and stuff. That was the aspect ratio of those TVs. And then as technology grew and the shapes of TVs went from like square to more of a rectangle shape, we're now at the area where we have this outside rectangle, which is the 16:9 aspect ratio that we're all used to seeing, which is the your 4K TVs, your 1080p TVs, your full HD kind of stuff like that. Lena asked, did you put them both together in the same AE project file that you made the second ball, or did you do it in a completely new After Effects project? I put this Cinema 4D ball in the same project file. So all I did was I came up into here and I created a main composition where I'm taking all of my balls and compositing them together in one comp. This is what I'm going to render out as at the end. And then the After Effects and Cinema 4D ball have their own little compositions, which you can drag down onto your timeline. and then I just imported the PNG sequence into here. I dragged the PNG sequence down onto my timeline, and then I have the After Effects composition nested into the main comp. So if you were to, here's my After Effects composition with all of my information from that ball that I did. And then I just created a new composition and took that After Effects ball comp and put it into the main one. You can infinitely nest compositions into each other inside of After Effects. And you just want to make sure that you have one composition, your main composition. That's the one you're going to render at the end. And I just kind of want to move these. I want to move this. I hope that makes sense. Does that make sense to you? But did you use the same After Effects project that I made the 2B? Yes. This is the same one. This is the, I had this project open at the beginning of class. I was updating it in, and that's the same project that I brought this one in. So this is my main project, right? And that main project has the After Effects. I don't have to make 2 separate After Effects files for this because I'm just going to keep everything in one project. It just is, it's just a cleaner way to work right now versus having like several different After Effects projects that I have to import into each other. You know, that gets messy after a while, so I'm just working within the one project file. All right, I'm going to grab this Cinema 4D. I'm going to drop it down a little bit so it's kind of more in line with this one. I might not, I'm not going to scale this. I'm going to actually put that back to 100 and just kind of bring this up so they're about, I want them about at the same height, right? I want them, the balls to be at the same height at the same time. Yeah, that looks good. So they're bouncing at the same time, right? So the big important key thing here when you're importing this when you're importing that PNG sequence into After Effects is making sure that you go into that, you select that sequence and you have to interpret that footage, right? You have to go to interpret footage main and make sure you're changing that to 24 frames a second so it matches it matches the frame rate that we rendered it out at. And then you have to, then it will need you to extend that layer here in your composition, right? So you have to extend that out. Unless you do this first before you drag that PNG sequence into your timeline, and then it'll automatically pull that whole thing. You don't have to extend your layer. And so I'm going to save this file right now. And I'm going to close out the Cinema 4D file because I'm done working in that for now. If I were to be picky, I'd probably adjust the colors of this and re-render it out so it matched more closely to the After Effects ball, but I'm okay with that. And do I want to save the changes? Yes, we're going to save those changes to the template. And we are going to open up Adobe Animate for the first time. Now, I'm going to try and get through this whole lesson with you guys. Because we're going to be looking at a brand new software here, and we're going to be doing some hand animation, right? And the difference between the 2 balls that we just animated versus hand animating the balls really is going to be the look of it, right? With hand-drawn animation, it's supposed to look cartoony. It's supposed to look more, you can exaggerate things more, right? Remember we talked about exaggeration as far as one of the principles of animation here in your, over here inside of your 12 principles of animation, we have exaggeration. So we have more room to exaggerate the proportions and stuff of the ball than we would have inside of After Effects or inside of Cinema 4D. And so this ball is going to just have a little bit more character to it than what you would normally see. I am going to be working on, let me turn my camera on real quick and so I can just show you. I have 2 Wacom tablets. I do have a Wacom Cintiq, which is the one with the screen actually on it. But unfortunately, mine is only, It only has connections for a Mac computer, which I'm not working on anymore. I work on a PC. But I also have this tablet right here, which is a Wacom Intuos tablet, and this one's connected with a USB cable. It's the first pen tablet that I had actually gotten. You can see these series of dots and stuff on the pen tablet, which coordinates to different positions on your screen. And so it takes a learning curve to just kind of get used to looking at your screen and having your hand down at the tablet and drawing at the same time. But this is a great introductory pen tablet to kind of start off with. It's fairly cheap. Now the ones with the wire sell for like $40. And the ones that are wireless or Bluetooth, they have Bluetooth options now. Which they didn't when I purchased it, but now they do. And those are running for about $100. There's also competitor ones on the market that you can always look into as well, that offer both display tablets where you can draw directly on it, or these kind of little basic introductory pen tablets where you're looking at the screen and drawing. The nice thing is that, again, I'll let you guys know that the school rents out Wacom tablets. So if you guys wanted to rent one out and play around with one and use one, you're more than welcome to do that. You can just go to the technology center, and same place where you rent the computers, and rent out a Wacom tablet. There's also some applications that they use, like if you have an iPad, you can connect the iPad. iPads seamlessly are going to connect with another Apple product. So if you're working on an iMac or on a MacBook, then you can easily just plug that in and use it as like a display tablet. But there just needs to be like a different form of communication between a PC and an iPad. So there are some apps on the market that you can download that allow that. I do have an iPad, but I don't have it right now in front of me, and so I'm just going to be using this pen tablet here. Lena asked, speaking of Wacom, do you know how to rent the Wacom tablets from GCC? I actually emailed the help desk about it, and they said to ask my professor. I believe Bell, right? It is through the technology center. It should be through the same place that you guys would rent a computer. Let me click on this real quick. I think that, hold on one second. Let me move this over. Oh, come on, my mouse is going crazy right now. If we go to the will my computer work for this class, student device request, I think you can go through here. Technology Resource Center. I can figure that out for you, Lena. Let me figure that out. I did email the same place where I made... Okay. Let me figure that out for you and see. You might have to be on campus to use them. I thought you could rent them out, but maybe they don't do that anymore. Maybe you have to, like, just be on campus and they'll, like, pull it out of the storage for you to work with. But if not... you could always go and, look into these other pen tablets if you guys want to do hand-drawn animation more often in class. For this particular project, it is okay if you guys just do it with a mouse and just do it to the best of your abilities. I'm not gonna knock you. Just try and make it as smooth as you can. Just spend some time on it. I don't want it to look like you just were like, oh, whatever, it's okay, it's good. Just try and spend a little more time on it, just evening it out. But I'm not gonna deduct points from you because it's not a perfect circle, right? Even I can't draw a perfect circle. So, and then Lena, I'll check on that information for you. All right, so I've got Adobe Animate opened up here. And I want to make sure that I'm on the full HD, the 1920 by 1080. And I want it to be at 12 frames a second. Remember I was discussing with you guys when you're hand-drawn, when you're animating and it's hand-drawn animation, you don't want to end up drawing like a bunch of different frames per second. So we're gonna put this in 12 frames a second. And I'm gonna hit create here. And it's going to open up like our staging area right here. I'm going to just kind of introduce, this is an Adobe product, so it's going to look more familiar, and it's going to have similar keyboard shortcuts, right? So here we have our stage, our scene that's happening. Down at the bottom, we have our timeline, and we also have a layer right here added on, like a base layer, right? We have a toolbar to our left, which will give you your paint brushes here, an eraser, your fill option, and color options down here. Over to the left, we have different panels over in this section right here. And we'll mostly want to be working within the properties panel to do this today. And so, the first thing that I want to do is I'm going to want to save this project. So I'm going to click File, and then I'm going to click down Save As. And then I'm going to navigate to the folder that I made for this main project. And notice that I don't have a folder for Adobe Animate, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to right click here, and I'm going to hit New, and I'm going to hit Folder, and I'm just going to sequentially go 07_AN for Adobe Animate. And that way I can keep my project file. I can create a new folder here that says Animate Project. And then one down here, right, if we ended up doing a PNG sequence, I could put PNG sequence right here. But I'm going to save it in the project folder. And, oh, I wanted to save that as something else. Let me save don't save as a template. I want to save with my name, right? So I'm going to delete these two. Eventually I'll delete those. But right now I'm going to put my last name, Makara, and then underscore hand animated ball. I'm going to hit save on here. And so we have our first scene here. Down at the bottom, we have our timeline right here, right? And so we don't want a background. We don't want a background on this, right? We're going to do this with an alpha channel, similar to what we did inside of Cinema 4D, because we're going to import this into After Effects. And so let me close this so you don't see this, because I wanted you guys to see the panel. Okay. All right, let me select that. When I select the properties panel, I'm probably going to try and extend that if I can. Can I do this? Are you going to let me? Oh. Let's try and go back. Window. I did something here I didn't want to do. How do I get out of this? Okay. Hold on, guys. I accidentally essentially made this too big. Let me drop that down. I think I have to find a way to dock it. And I'm going to close Adobe After Effects because my computer is starting to run fairly slowly here. So I'm going to just make sure you wanted to save. I had already saved my After Effects file, so I wanted to make sure that I saved the rest of it. I'm going to close out. Maybe it won't save it like this. No, let's not save the changes. Let's go back to that GCC folder. Hopefully it didn't save that. I'm going to go to projects. I'm going to delete this untitled one. I'm going to open this one up. Hopefully it didn't say that. Okay, it did not. Okay, reset it. There. Okay, now at the bottom, we have our layer here, like our base layer, right? And there's nothing drawn on that layer, but we're going to draw a guide onto this layer. We want this layer to exist throughout the animation while we're drawing it. And then we're going to hide this layer when we go to render it out. But this is going to be a guide for us to know. We're going to create this to help us map out our timing for the ball bounce. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go from here. Let me see if I'm going to zoom down at the bottom here. You can zoom in and out of your timeline like you would inside of After Effects. And I'm going to select these frames from 0 here. I'm going to hold down Shift to 24, this 24th frame right down here at the bottom, right before that 25. I'm going to select that. And when those are highlighted, I'm going to right click on this and I am going to insert a frame, a single frame. And so what this does is, notice how it turned into one solid bar, right? So I can draw, let me select my brush tool, and I can draw something. And if I move on all these other frames, it is staying on those frames, right? Versus if I add a new layer in here, let me do this real quick. All right, here's something happened. Let me delete this little frame here at the bottom. Oh, where's that? Delete. I want to extend this. Sorry guys, I'm just wildly clicking at the moment. Move that back over. Okay. So now it is on all of them. All right. Now I created this other layer up here. I'm going to delete that layer. And I'm going to add a new one. And I want to select all from 0 to 24 again. And I'm going to right click and I'm going to, instead of inserting a frame or inserting a keyframe, I'm going to convert to keyframes. Now you're going to automatically notice a difference here in what these look like. These are separate keyframes because they're separate little boxes. And when it has these little circles on it, it's showing that there's like room. It's blank right now, but there's room to draw on each one of these frames, right? We're going to draw frame to frame to frame, which is not pose to pose, but is it's frame to frame. I think it's called frame to frame. What was it called? Let's go back to our, it's frame to frame animating. I just want to make sure I use the correct term. Yeah, straight ahead. So we're going to be animating straight ahead, which means we're going to be going from one frame to the next frame to the next to the next, so on and so forth. And the difference between this one and these ones is this is one single frame that stretches across all of the 24 different frames on the timeline, but it's one single image frame versus this, which is going to be separate little drawings for each frame, right? And so we're going to move our playhead to the beginning. And I want to show you a couple things before we get started. This here, this little button right down here is called onion skinning. Onion skinning is a term that was derived from the classic animators when they used to hand-drawn animate, and they used to draw on transparent paper where they would flip over and back and forth, and they'd flip back and forth, and they could see their drawings underneath. And so that way they could essentially, you know, continue to make those drawings and warp them or change them or do whatever they needed to because they could see what was done below, right? And so we have something inside of our program called onion skinning, which allows us to see the previous drawing on the previous frame, right? And so we're gonna turn the onion skinning on, it's going to allow us to see 4 frames at a time, so 4 little drawings at a time. And that way we just have like a map, like a blueprint of where our next drawing should go. Now over here on the toolbar panel, there's a couple different there are a couple different brushes you can use. The fluid brush is a brush that is primarily used with, I think, your GPU, and some computers can handle it and some computers cannot handle using this brush. If yours can't handle it, that's totally fine. Just use this regular classic brush right here. It works the same. It just looks a little different, right? Kind of gives you more of that guided outline versus the fluid brush, which shows you right away, right? And so I'm gonna just clear everything off of this frame. I'm gonna hit E for the eraser tool. I'm just gonna erase all of this. Let me see. Let's just erase everything. And we're gonna start from scratch. Okay. Just erase things, just getting all of this gone. All right. Empty. Now on this guide layer, I'm going to select this guide layer, and I'm going to erase this as well because I want it to be a straight guide that we're going to draw. Now, okay, hold on. Sorry, guys. I wonder if I can clear the... Do you know if I can clear the frame in any way? I don't know why I did that. Let me see here. Clear keyframe. There you go. You can just right click and clear keyframe, and that works just fine. And so I want to make sure that I'm selected on this guide layer. I'm going to rename it guide layer. And then I'm going to select this next layer up here. Okay, it doesn't allow spaces, so you have to put underscores. And this one's just going to be labeled ball. And I'm going to select this guide layer down here. And I want to grab my pen tool, and I'm going to change the, up here in the properties, I'm going to make this smaller. Let's see. I don't want the size so high, so I'm going to drop the size down to half. That looks good. And then I am going to, so over in this area, under your properties panel, you get more options as far as like color goes. Your fluid, you can change the size of your brush. If you want this to kind of, the curve smoothing is going to be very helpful if you are using a mouse, right? Your angle, I'm probably going to turn my angle down so that the angle of the brush is like just straight up and down. And then you guys will not have the pressure option. Notice as I put firmer pressure on here versus lighter pressure, I get the pressure option, but that's because I'm on a pen tablet. So I'm going to drop that down so it's just going to be similar to what you guys are working with, right? Down to 2 with it. That's fine. Do we have to draw a platform as well or just a ball? We're just going to draw the ball in this one. So you don't have to. You can if you want to. If you want to add the platform in, that's totally fine. I would draw the ball first and then add the platform last. But I'm going to try and zip through this because we only have 15 minutes left, and I want you guys to be, like, I want to be conscious of your time here. And so in animation, when we're hand drawing animating, there is a rule as far as like our keyframes go. This is just an example right now. But say these are our frames, right? These are our keyframes. And the closer that keyframes are together, the slower the animation is going to go. What is this sticky key? No, stop doing that. If I hit spacebar, I can move my frame around like this, right? So the closer together that the frames are, the drawings are, the slower the animation is. The further apart that the frames are, right? The further that we start to get apart, come on now. The faster the animation occurs, right? So come on, there we go. So this area right here is fast. This is how we do our easing, right? And these drawings over here would be slow. And remember, we were talking about slow ins and slow outs, right? We're slowly coming out from a stop, and then we speed up, and then we're going to slow back down, right? Kind of like there. Well, for this bounce, let me clear this. Let me remove that frame. For the bouncing ball that we're going to create, we want the ball to accelerate on the way down and decelerate on the way up. So we're going to draw this vertical guide. Holding down shift, I'm going to just draw this line. And I'm going to draw a line at the bottom here. Do this again. Holding down shift. Holding down shift. And these are like our first and our second keyframes. When we're separating this out, there's kind of a basic rule. You want to separate it into thirds. Each section is going to be separated into thirds. So you have the 1/3, 2/3 rule is really what it is. So here's the first is 1/3. Here's the second is 2/3, right? 2/3. So when we're spacing them out, you kind of want them to be about this proportion in between each section when you're doing them. And so I have the first section drawn out. I'm going to go up here and then just kind of separate this one. Come on now. Here we go. 1/3, 2/3, right? Similar. I'm going to do that to this one. So I'm going to do 1/3, 1/3, 2/3. And right now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frames on here. The other way to draw the ball is to just use the shape tools. There's an ellipse tool. Oh yeah, you could do that. That's fine. As for the guide, you could use the line tool. The yeah, you can use the, where's the line tool at? Oh yeah, up here. You can just do that if you want to. Actually, that'll be nice. Let me try that. We'll do that way. And so here we're going to separate it again. And then, do I have to do anything? Do I have to stroke that, or does it automatically have a stroke now? That actually works better. But we'll continue doing this. So then into a third again, kind of into this thing, we're going to separate it into a third again. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 frames. We're going to have to go a total of 24 frames because we're going to draw this over 2 seconds. And then when we bring this into After Effects, it will look different. I'm probably going to do it again here. And then again here. Remember, the closer that these are, the slower that it is. Right? I'm probably going to draw another one. Right. Let me see. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 frames here. That's fine. Let's start drawing this ball. And so I'm going to select the brush tool. And now this this guide, remember this is all the way, this single frame is all the way around here. I'm going to lock this guide layer so that I can't move it. I'm going to select the ball layer now. And I'm going to start, I'm going to select a different color for the ball. Let's do that purple color that I was kind of working with, right? We'll do something there. We don't want the stroke on it. Is there a way to shut that stroke off? I don't think it's on there. Okay, never mind. Okay, so I'm going to start drawing the ball up at the top here. Now I want you guys to remember, I don't like that, that when you're drawing the ball, you want the volume to remain the same, right? So I'm going to draw that first ball. There we go. That's a better circle. Kind of centered along that that guide, right? And then I'm going to hit period on the keyboard. Period and comma allow you to move back and forth on the timeline one frame to the next, right? So I'm going to hit the period to move forward, and then I'm going to draw another ball. But this ball is going to be still kind of close and still about the same. You want it to be about the same volume. It's not going to stretch quite yet. I'm just hitting back here. And then we're going to go to the next frame. So I'm going to hit period again. And notice that the next one, this one ball kind of got lighter because we're dealing with the onion skinning right now. The onion skinning is happening, but it is similar to a color that I picked on the thing. So you guys will see as I go. So I'm going to get a little bit further away from this one. And then I'm going to move another frame. So I've got 3 drawings so far. And then I'm going to move a little bit further down. Notice that I'm moving further apart, starting to move further apart, keeping about the same volume. And then I'm going to start to stretch. I'm going to start to stretch this object out a little bit. So I'm going to go. No, I don't like that. Come on. Notice it's starting to kind of change shape a little bit, but staying the same volume, right? And then I'm going to, you want them to be lined up. We can always move these later with the selection tool. You can select the frame specifically there, and then you can use the selection tool to kind of line these up a little bit more, right? And I'm going to move a little bit further down from this one and kind of get more of an oval shape. It's keeping about the same volume, right? And then I'm going to move ahead another frame, and I'm going to draw another one, starting to stretch that out more. I'm going to, that's a little bit too big. Let's keep it about the same volume right there. It's not bad. And then I'm going to go further apart now. Stretching it more. It's going to go further down here. It's going to stretch more. It's a little bit too big. A little too skinny. Right, there's good. We're going to go further down. Get real skinny here. It's getting that squashing and stretching as that velocity and gravity is pulling that ball down further, right? We're about to hit the ground here. And we're already at, what are we at, 10 frames? I think we're at 10 frames. Cool. So we might just be on the right path to getting right at, and we're going to go real skinny. But the volume is about the same, right? So I'm elongating it. But the volume of the ball is remaining very similar. Right, we don't want to change that. And then I'm going to move to the next frame, and now we're going to make contact with the ground, right? So this is where it's going to get a little bit more fun here. This is where we can really kind of add some character into this ball. I'm going to kind of make it like it's starting to squish here, right? So almost like a Hershey Kiss shape for me. That's what I want to do. Retaining volume. It's a little big. Let's do it again. Right around there. That's okay. And then I'm going to go to the next one, and we're really going to squish this boy out right now. We're going to squish him out nice and long. A little big. There. So I want to kind of play this back quickly to see kind of what I have. So I'm going to hit loop, this loop button there, and notice that this little kind of looping area showed up. I'm just going to bring that all the way down to the end. to the beginning and then all the way down to the end here at 24 frames. So when I play this, it's going to just kind of show me what it looks like so far, what I have done so far, right? So not bad. So let's go to the next frame. And we're going to start to shoot back up. Actually, I'm gonna squish this out one more. I want this to squish real good. So I'm going to squish this out one more frame. Maybe make it real skinny. Like he really squishes, right? Go to the next frame. Now we're going to start to go back up. In fact, it would be the opposite shape of, I kind of want it to be like it's going back. And then remember, as we're going to go up further, we're going to get closer and closer together. Because we're going to slow the ball. The velocity is slowing down. The momentum of the ball, it's losing momentum as it's going into the air. So then this next one is going to stretch still. I'm just moving kind of quickly now because I know you guys have time to get here. So we're going to do another one. We're going to add a little less stretch into this. So it's going to be a little rounder. This is not, doing this really quickly is not good for someone who likes to perfect things. And obviously, like, these balls are a little too tilted. If I were doing this with time, I would be more tedious on how I'm, like, illustrating these, right? And so then I'm going to go to the next one, and this ball is going to be starting to get more back to the original shape, right? It's going up. Retaining volume, biggest thing. Retaining that volume. Retaining that vol. Let me do this again. Yeah, that'll work. Just for now. Just quick. This is very quick for you guys. Retaining that volume. The drawings are going to get closer together. It's a little too big. There we go. Next one, closer together, retaining the volume. Next one, closer together, retaining the volume. And then we only have one more. We're on the 23rd frame, so we're going to finish it off on the final frame. I think it would be, can we copy this one? We want it to end up kind of like right up here. So I might have to move some frames ahead. Like if I go to this next frame, I want to kind of be up this way, right? More towards what it looked like in the beginning. And so, but if I play this right now, we have a nice squishing ball. Notice that it speeds up to the ground and it slows down when it comes up to the top, right? Would I recommend using the ellipse tool or hand drawing is better? You guys can use the ellipse tool if you feel like it. Hand drawing it gives it a little bit more of character. Like obviously it looks a lot more hand drawn here. And you can do, you know, it's just fun to do that way. You should have fun animating. But if you want to, you can always do that with the ellipse tool up here too. You can always create this and then do it this way. But when you do it like this, right, it starts to look more and more like that After Effects ball. And we want it to kind of look more organic, of an organic option. And what you guys can do now, when you get those balls like perfected, you can hide your guide layer, right? And then you can turn off your onion skinning. And you can take your fill tool here and you can start filling in each frame. So I'm going to just pushing period as I go down, filling in each frame. It looks like a kidney bean in some of these. images. Ooh, this one I'm going to have to close the gap here, right? I want this gap closed. So that when I go to fill, which fill is, I think, K. Fill is K. K for shortboard, keyboard shortcut. All right, there we go. We want the 24 frames. We don't want this last frame to be... Can I remove that? Okay, yeah. We don't want that last frame there. We want it 24 frames total. And so now if I play it back, we have a bouncing ball. And so what I would do next, I know we're a little over in time, but I want to kind of get to exporting this out and bringing it into After Effects. And so what I would do next is I would select, go up here to File and to Export. And you want to export it yeah, so like the thirds rule for the line is like this, Lena. So if I add another, let me add another layer here. And on this fourth layer, I'm gonna draw that line here. Oh, come on now. Oh, because it's white. Let's turn it to black. All right, so I'm going to draw that line, holding down Shift. And I'm going to draw a line at the bottom. So here's the top of my bounce, and here's the bottom of my bounce. In this section in between here, I want to pretend like I'm splitting it into three parts. So I'm going to draw a line here. So this would be like 2/3 of the pie, and this is a third. Like think of this like a candy bar, right? This is a third of the candy bar and 2/3 of the candy bar. Then I'm going to take, oops, let me delete that text. I'm going to take this 2/3 of the candy bar here, and I'm going to separate that into another third. So I'm going to pretend like this is its own separate candy bar now. I'm going to cut a third off of that again, right? And so each time I do this, I'm going to go back up to this section now, and I'm going to cut this into a third. Then I'm going to take this section now right here, and I'm going to cut this into a third. And notice as I start doing that it starts to, ooh, we're having a dust storm soon. But when I'm doing this, it is, these keyframes are naturally getting closer and closer together, right? So I'm going to cut this into a third, like cut a third off of that. Then this one, I'm going to cut a third off of this one. Oh, that one's kind of close. Like up here. And then this part, I'm going to do the same right here. And then this part, I'm going to do the same right here until notice we're getting closer and closer and closer together, right? And I'm going to do that right there. And so then each one of these lines kind of equals a frame of just like this is how your images should be. Like closer together at the top, and then as they're going down, each one of these represents kind of like an image that you're drawing. So as you're up at the top of the bounce, because that's where it's slowing down, and these images are going to be closer and closer and closer together. And then as you start to speed up, these images are going to be further and further and further and further apart. Does this help you kind of understand? I didn't really draw a circle on each one of these lines. I just kind of used it as a guide of like, okay, my images up at the top need to be nice and tight and closer together. And then as I'm drawing further down this guide, I'm gonna separate those drawings apart further so that I can add more speed. Right? The further apart it is, the faster the animation. The further apart the images are, the faster the animation occurs. The closer together the images are, the slower the animation is. Does that help? Does that help you, Lena? A little bit more? It's just kind of a way, you don't have to do the 2/3 rule. It just helps. But you can like just, as long as the lines at the top are a lot closer together, Did you draw the, yes, I drew the guide on a separate layer so that I could hide the guide. So when I go to export it out, the guide is not there. Because you don't want the guide in your, you don't want the guide to be in your animation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to File and then down to Export. And I'm going to export this as video media. And we're going to ignore the stage colors so that it generates an alpha channel. And we want to, I think this is the one. You can also just drag this. It doesn't have to be necessarily a PNG sequence. You can also just drag this animate file into After Effects. Let's do that. That'll be easier. So let's just close this out. We want to save it. Yes, save the changes. And we're going to go into our After Effects folder real quick. I'm going to just open this. And then I'll end the stream after I show you guys how to import this in. And I'm going to direct you to watch another short video on compositing and adding a title. But inside of this assets, I am going to hit Control I to import. And I'm going to go to that Animate project file that I had. And I'm going to just import it. Just hit Import Composition. You want to import it like that. And it is going to give me this little preferences thing here. Import audio if present. We don't have to. That is fine. I'm just going to hit OK. And it is going to bring in my layers. It brings it in as separate layers. So I've got my guide layer and I've got my ball layer. I don't want to use the guide layer. That can just be deleted if you want to, or you can just not drag it in, right? But I am going to drop this folder into my assets folder. Let's do that first. And then drop this in my comps folder to keep everything nice and clean. And then down here, I'm just going to drag this, this ball layer down onto my timeline. But before I do that, notice that it says 12 frames a second. We have to change that, right? So I'm going to right click and go to interpret footage and hit main. And we're going to change that to 24 frames a second so that we are equal all across our animations. And I'm going to drag that in and I'm going to extend, let me see here. I'm going to bring this over here. And so when I play it, it's going to bounce at about the same time. We will want to, because this is only 1 second long, we're going to want to duplicate it. So let me go into this hand animated composition that was imported in here. And I'm going to extend, hit Control K, the composition to 4 seconds. And I am going to just delete this. We're going to unlock and delete this guide layer so that we don't have it in here. And then this ball layer, I'm going to hit Control D to duplicate it. And then I'm going to bring my playhead over to that 1 second. And I'm going to zoom in here so I can make sure that I'm dragging this end to end. Remember, so from one end, from one to the other, it's one, so there's no like overlap. You don't want them looking like that. You don't want it to look like that. You want them to be end to end, right? And so I'm going to duplicate this second ball I did, just selecting that layer and hitting Control D, and then dragging that over end to end. And this is how we're going to get all 4 of those bounces. Selecting the third layer, hitting Control D to duplicate, dragging that end to end. And now if I play it, you're going to have 4 full bounces that are looping, and they look exactly the same. And so now I just have to take that composition, right? We can ignore that, but grab this composition and drag this into the timeline, and it's going to match up with all of the bounces of the rest of my video. And then I'm going to save it. And then later what we'll do is, later what you guys will do is add a title and stuff. I want you guys to go through, and in this video will also talk a little bit more about like compositing, so bringing all of those in together. It's going to remind you guys about interpreting the footage. which is the most important thing when you're bringing these in here. And that will help you get the timing correct. And so I want you guys to watch this video. It's shorter. It's not nearly as long as class, right? This video is probably like 10 minutes long, I think. So watch this one. And then it'll tell you how to add a title into your video. And it will tell you how to composite them all together and how to export it out as a single MP4, right? Because you're just going to turn in the MP4. You're not going to turn in an After Effects file. And it's going to be, it'll tell you how to do it at 1920 by 1080 at 24 frames a second. You're going to use a setting. You can use the YouTube setting, which will be 1080, which will be that. It'll be this encoding setting will be the same as this right up there. And then just make sure that the bounce repeats 4 times, right? And you want to include that fade in and fade out title. This is the rubric that I grade all of your work off of. So if you want to make sure that you're going to get on 100%, I recommend watching this or looking at this rubric and making sure that your work, that all of your work is, you know, checks off on these parameters for each one of these. But yeah, so that's how to put all of 3 of them together. When you're ready to submit that, you will, you know, you guys will start the assignment, and then down here, all you're gonna upload is a video file, an MP4 file, right? With the 3 balls in the title. So, yeah. Do you have any more questions before I end the stream? Put my video back on. If you want to see a more another detailed, like hand-drawn animation video, you can also watch the one that was in the module. Oh, come on now. Okay, hold on. If you guys want to see another way to do the hand-drawn animation one, you can watch this video that's right here. That also goes through how to do a hand-drawn animation one. But all right, well, I hope you guys have a great holiday weekend. You know, have fun with this. I think that's the biggest thing that students forget to do. It's a very, like, all of this is so technical that it's kind of overwhelming. But I really, like, the biggest thing I want you guys to do is I really want you guys having fun animating and, like, and kind of, like, taking these, what you're learning and absorbing it, and, like, then you're going to apply these things later on in your other projects. And when you start to have the ability to really, like, move off on your own and create these projects from your own imagination and stuff, you'll have all these principles and all of these techniques in mind, and it'll get easier as you go, right? It'll be, you'll get quicker at it, and you'll understand things a little bit more. But if you guys have any questions, you can always ask me. You can always ask Belle. And, you know, we're always willing to help you. But really have fun with this, you guys. And have fun with the hand-drawn one, right? We don't do... This is the only hand-drawn thing we do in class. Maybe I can try and implement something else in here. But while you can, just have fun doing it, you know? So, I'm going to close this out. You're struggling with the hand drawing, but it's because you're horrible perfectionist, but I think I understand the software. Yeah, understanding the software is the thing. Being a perfectionist is also a problem of a lot of people who do art. It was hard for me just doing that lesson very quickly because I'm the same way. And, like, not being able to draw a ball at the same like size really drives me nuts. You can always use the ellipse tool as a guide as well if you want to like have a guide and like trace over it. Like maybe you block out the animation with the ellipse tool, and then you go over it hand drawing it, and it might make it a little bit easier to keep like the volume the same and to keep it but to give it kind of that natural outline look, right? Like that natural hand drawn kind of jitter that they have. And what I always suggest doing to students, like if you're drawing at all, like this is for art students, animation, it doesn't matter. Like if you're doing art, draw 2 full pages of both circles and lines. Just all lines, all circles, that's it. Just circle, 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 circle. 2 full pages of it. Then go to lines. 2 full pages of lines. Just on like whatever you're drawing on. And then that gets your it helps with your hand-eye coordination, to getting your brain and your arm working in sync, and to getting like those circles like more perfect, so that when you're doing it, you're like in that automatic motion, and you're just kind of all of a sudden doing it. It's very natural that way because you practice it over and over and over again. You're just like much quicker. So that's like just a suggestion I have to students when it comes to like practicing drawing. It's like a warm up, just like a drawing warm up that helps. So, but other than that, I'm excited to see what you guys have for work, and I hope you guys have a good long weekend, right? And this is due. I have this due before class on Tuesday night, so I think it's Monday night. It's due. Because I want to go over them and look at them. So, all right, class. And then I give you guys feedback on them in class too. So that will be nice. But okay, I hope you guys have a good weekend.